Talking technology for social justice, David Spriggs. He is the CEO of Info Exchange, but he says he doesn't like the term CEO. He prefers the term chief janitor. So, our chief janitor of Info Exchange, born in the mid-70s, born in Scotland, no longer calling Scotland home. He now calls Melbourne home. He grew up with computers. He taught himself to program after his dad bought home for the family one of the very first IBM PCs in the 1980s. Nowadays, David has over 20 years' experience working in senior management positions in the not-for-profit sector as well as the technology sector. Passionate about creating a more digitally inclusive society and the role that technology can have and can play in improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the not-for-profit sector. David has a Bachelor of IT from the University of Queensland and a certificate in theology from Trinity College at the University of Melbourne. Info Exchange is a not-for-profit social enterprise delivering technology for social justice for the last 25 years. It was while working in the IT industry that David first heard about Info Exchange. He thought its mission was so important that he volunteered there, volunteering his time and his skills. And he volunteered there for 10 years. He liked it so much that he left his corporate life and started working there full-time and became the CEO in 2013. He's going to tell you a little bit about what they do. He is a passionate Hawthorn AFL supporter. He is a lover of Seinfeld on TV. He described himself as a Uber driver, driving his two children to all their sports and other activities on the weekend. But David's main claim to fame as a Scotsman is that he once walked into a bar with an Englishman and an Irishman and absolutely nothing funny happened. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to talk technology for social justice. The Scot with the lot, Mr. David Spriggs. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that very warm introduction. And I don't have the Scottish accent anymore, but I'll have to do my best to try and help us get above this. What is it? The Audiocraft Podcasting Festival that's going on in parallel. So we're talking here today about what sort of world do we want to live in and the Sustainable Development Goals. Our role at Info Exchange is all around technology for social justice. So how might technology be able to play a part in reaching some of those goals and helping solve some of the most significant social issues that we have right here in Australia is our focus. And I'm going to spend some time today talking about homelessness and a project that we've been involved with called Ask Izzy, which is a mobile website for people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness that helps them connect into services right across the country. I might start with a couple of sobering statistics for the morning. 1 in 200 people on any given night in Australia are homeless. I'll just ask us to stop and think about that for a minute. 1 in 200 people. Over 116,000 people in the last census count back in 2016. And if you think about what a fortunate country we are, what a wealthy country we are, you just think about how completely unacceptable it is that we have that many people who can't find a bed on any given night in Australia. And if your image of somebody who's homeless is the old man under the bridge, 40% of people who are homeless are under the age of 25. 25% of people who are homeless are women and children fleeing family violence in this country. Homelessness can literally happen to anybody. It could happen to any of us. Nobody expects to be homeless. Nobody kind of makes a plan around being homeless. Anybody who finds himself in that situation finds it extremely difficult to work out where are the services, where can I get help? And often in a lot of cases there's a lot of shame and people don't actually want to reach out and ask for that help. A lot of people find it surprising, but over 80% of people who are homeless have smartphones. Often they're on prepaid, sometimes with no credit. But they can call emergency services, they can receive calls, and they access the free Wi-Fi that's kind of available, not just in our cities, but in regional areas right across the country. And they're very active online, on Facebook, quite often communicating with friends and staying in touch. And if you want to read more about that, there's a fantastic report that the University of Sydney put out. Justine Humphrey led the research called Homeless and Connected, which kind of goes into that in a lot more detail. But it was that was the inspiration for us to create Ask Izzy. So as I say, it's a mobile website. It uses the location features on somebody's mobile to help connect them with the services that so many of us take for granted on a day-to-day basis. So yes, it can help you connect in with shelter services, but also kind of all of those everyday things. Where can I get a meal? Where can I get a food package? Where might I be able to get a shower? We've got Nick and Lucas from Orange Sky Laundry talking later today. It's got all of the Orange Sky Laundry vans across the country in there. Where might I be able to wash my clothes? How can I get some money help? How can I get some support and counselling? All of those sorts of things that are really difficult for people to find. Putting that information directly into the hands of people who need to find it through the mobile website. One of these goals here is around partnerships. 17, and very much from the beginning, Ask Izzy has been a collaboration, or what we've called a whole of community partnership. We were fortunate enough to win the Google Impact Challenge for this idea, which provided the funding to help us get it going. And really, in that combining info exchanges, we've had a service directory now for 25 years, 350,000 services across the country. But it was used by people in the sector, and it was used by people in government. So our challenge here was, how could we make it directly available to people in need? So that's sort of the piece Info Exchange brought in. Google brought not only funding, we had a whole lot of volunteers and people committing their time, particularly from the Google Maps group. If you think about a critical piece for Ask Izzy, it's finding the services that are near to where the person is. They put a huge amount of assistance into that. Realestate.com.au came on board as a partner. Their core mission is about helping people get into housing, and so a lot of their philanthropic efforts are all around the homelessness sector. They support us, they support Orange Sky Laundry, they support Launch Housing, but they actually seconded developers across to work alongside our team and know a thing or two about how to develop user-friendly websites. And News Corp. And you kind of think, why News Corp? Well, for us, it was really important that we actually get the word out, that we get the message out. And there's no point building something like this if people aren't aware of it and people aren't using it. Probably the most important collaboration we've had was with people with lived experience of homelessness. And a lot of people talk about co-design these days and just think because you've got a whiteboard and some colourful post-it notes and some pens that you're doing co-design. This has been very much true co-design from the beginning with people with lived experience of homelessness and some of the services that support them. And really some key insights that came out of that co-design that have led us to where we are today. Everything starting from the branding. Originally, everybody in the sector was saying, let's call this Homeless Help or Homeless Assist. When we started talking to people, it became quickly evident, particularly for younger people, they don't necessarily see themselves as homeless. And so a welcoming character-based name like Ask Izzy was far more appropriate. It quickly came out, we thought this should be an app. It quickly came out that a mobile website was far more appropriate. Far easier for people just go to askizzy.org.au than to have to go to an app store. You have to put in all of your details, it probably asks you for a credit card. There's all these barriers to actually getting into an app store. Even down to seemingly simple things like the colours we were using. We had a colour blue in one of our initial prototypes, and we're instantly told that that's one of the Centrelink colours. And no offence to anybody from the Centrelink or DHS that might be here, but if anybody here's had that experience and has tried to enter a Centrelink office and tried to get help, forget it. That is kind of scarred in your brain. So very quickly we've got to move away from that colour scheme. But co-design from the very beginning, and the people who have been involved in that co-design are now the biggest advocates and the biggest promoters of the solution in the community. So we were fortunate to have the Prime Minister and Lucy Turnbull come and launch the application for us in early 2016, and at the time sort of supported by all levels of government, corporates and the community sector. And why was that important to kind of have a bit of a high-profile launch? Again, it was back to getting the word out there and making sure people are aware of it. Not just people who might be in crisis at the moment who are homeless, but people who are at risk of homelessness. People fleeing family violence, for example, that they're aware of what services they can connect with and how to connect in with those services. It's having a real impact out there, and I'd like to tell some of the personal stories. Up there is Danny, who fell on hard times, drug addiction, ended up living on the streets in inner city Melbourne for 4 to 5 years. His commentary on Ask Izzy was that it took him 2 to 3 years on the street to pick up what he could learn just within a few minutes on Ask Izzy in finding relevant services. But I think probably the proudest moment for me, Danny came to the launch of Ask Izzy, was when he said they actually listened. He said, this is one of the first time people have actually come to me and asked, what do you think would be useful? And now I can actually see the results of that in the site. Claire, somebody who fled a family violence situation, she's talked about the use of Ask Izzy really as an empowering piece. Often in the state, people will feel completely helpless. And actually being empowered to, rather than somebody telling you which service to go to, actually being able to look at what services are available, read a bit about them, and then making that choice yourself to go and connect with the service. That may sound like a small thing, but it makes an enormous difference. And it makes an enormous difference in terms of that person's ability to then work with the service and interact with the service. How are we going in terms of usage? Our original goal was to try and help 100,000 people looking for help in the first 2 years. We've just passed the 2-year mark and over 1 million searches for help in that time. Thank you. Thank you. And we've just recently put out a blog post, 1 million reasons not to celebrate. So while we're really pleased people are aware of it, how sad is it that there's that many people in our community that need access to just really basic services. The other piece though that's telling us now is a lot of really useful information on service demand. So for the first time, we've actually now got a picture of what is the demand for these various services across the country that can be used by government, it can be used by service providers to help tailor their services and help tailor the funding for the sector based on where the real need is across the community. I talked before about people fleeing family violence. People fleeing family violence are actually the #1 users of Ask Izzy. So close to 30% of our users are identifying as fleeing a family violence situation. So where we're going next, we're working on a new project at the moment, funded by the National Australia Bank, by the NAB Foundation, to further tailor Ask Izzy to meet the needs of people fleeing family violence, and again, sort of education and awareness in community. And I'll finish off just talking about a couple of the barriers for people using Ask Izzy. So I mentioned 80% of people who are homeless have smartphones, but some people don't. And so it's a really important thing for us that workers and volunteers in the sector are aware of Ask Izzy and are able to use it. Orange Sky, that are speaking later today, they have Ask Izzy as part of the app that all of their volunteers use. So if they're talking with their friends, I love that term, if they're talking to their friends in community, they can refer them on to services. Another big barrier is people not having credit on their mobiles. So I talked about people on prepaid, no credit. You can access free Wi-Fi, great, but if you need a service now, you really don't want to have to go and find some free Wi-Fi. So Telstra have come on board as a partner, and it's now what they call zero rated on the Telstra network, which means if you've got no credit on your phone, you can actually use it, you can find the service, you can even use Google Maps to get directions. And if you're a customer of one of the other telcos out there, please help us to put pressure on the other telcos. That's an active campaign we're running at the moment. The final piece is power. So if you think about somebody sleeping rough, how do they actually charge their devices? And I've got one of these here. There's a picture here. We've been developing these power cards, and with one of these cards, you can charge your phone back up to full strength. You can charge it back up when you're into a food service or something like that, and then when you're out on the streets, you can use it to charge your phone. It's got all of the connectors, so you don't have to bother worrying, carrying around all these cables. You can charge it. It's got all of the different phone connectors on there. So these things cost about $15 each. We've raised enough money for a bit over 10,000 of them so far. But anybody who would like to contribute, please go to our website. You'll see a donate link. And for $15, we create these, we distribute these to service providers across the country. And the demand is overwhelming. We're always being asked for more of it. So thank you. I think I'm out of time. But what sort of a world do I want to live in 2030? It's a world without homelessness. So thank you very much.